All right, hello everyone. Welcome to today's session. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I'm Andrea Hobby, Executive Committee member of Black Tides, and today Kofi Oduro will be presenting on using data to amplify your voice. He's a creative coder and performative programmer, and here you go. You can start.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we're a small group, so I guess we're going to have a lot of conversation because I do tailor it depending on the group. So first of all, I have asked for some food color combinations, and there is a Google Doc. So, and I guess I'm going to start off with that, where even though this is a data visualization talk, where I really want to bring it into is that data is more than just visualization, analytics, and there's many things you can do: data choreography, data journalism, data sonification. And also I'm trying to show that like within all of our cultures, and I did make sure that I did show a plethora of Black initiatives or historically Black entities from all specters. So we have some from North American, we have some from West African, in particular Ghana, and then we also have some from Trinidad because it's Carnival season. So I thought it was only right to add something with Carnival and try to show how like even before computers, we were always using data from how we sang, how we view our hair, and try to come up with ways how like since we're all interested in data science, how we can make that personal to us. And one of the ways I have recently done that is by sonification. So if you go into Google Docs, I'm going to send it again. There's some random words. And one of the things that we know in a lot of our cultures is that we like to write and we like to do poetry, songs, express ourselves. So what you're hearing, the sounds you're going to hear right now are actually the word are actually correlated to the words that are in the document. So let me just share that. Oh, was everyone able to hear that? Just making sure everyone was able to hear. So what you heard is a sonification process where it took every word that was written, and depending on the length of the word and how frequent the word was, it gave you a different sound. And these are some ways that we can explore data. I'm just making, just give me a thumbs up if you were able to hear that. Okay. So that's just something to just get our minds that when I'm talking about data, I'm really talking like the broad spectrum. And one of the earliest forms of data visualization that I came across with is kente cloth. So if you're not familiar with kente cloth, it is a certain woven textile pattern that is home to people from Ghanaian heritage. So I'm just gonna reshare my screen. And yeah, these are Kente Club, you might have seen them because they are used quite a bit, a lot in it. And if you remember when the Democrats were trying to do one of the June 19 things, they were wearing all Kente cloth in this picture. So one of the ways to how this is early data viz is that for some tribes, and I'm going to send a link for in the chat, is that some tribes would use this as a way to represent their status, represent if they're married. So yeah, so in some cultures, like if you use blue, it could represent how old you are. Like depending on the shade of blue, it could represent if you're married, if you're single, it could represent your age, it could represent if you're from royal or noble blood. So you see, in some ways, Yellow meant royalty, wealth, beauty. Green meant fertility. Red meant blood. Blue meant peace. Pink meant happiness. Orange meant die. So depending on the fabric and the relation of the patterns, you would get to be able to tell a lot about a person by what kente cloth they were wearing. And this is one of the forms of how, like, amplifying our voice, because it might not have even come to our heads that the patterns that we've seen in stuff, such as these cloths, some as these wax fabrics, did tell an instance. And it was no different than looking at a chart, because even though now we're using stuff like Python, Ruby, Tableau to analyze analytics was way before computers, right? Like a map is an early form. So one of the things is, like, when, especially now is Black History Month, sometimes people will say, well, what have they done before? But it's like we can't ignore the past, because the past does go in the future. So it's one of the things that if I tell you, if we go back to that line and it's like where it said the colors, pink means love and happiness, orange means wealth. So just like a normal database where you would have the legend, maybe one tribe might go with, okay, the darker the orange, the wealthier you are. And if you're going out to a party, maybe you want to symbolize how happiness goes in. And I think this is also no different than if you go to some of those parties when you have to wear the blue ring to represent a certain status. So yeah, this is one of those early forms of database patterns, because patterns are all around us. And then it makes you think that if you were to represent your life in a pattern, what color or what ways would you express happiness or your hobbies? Do all of us represent happiness with pink? Probably not. So maybe that's another question. What color at the moment would you represent happiness? And how would you express happiness? Would happiness be based on like a straight line going up, or is happiness in waves? So if I were to tell you, like, represent happiness in a shape or in a form, what shape would come to mind? A triangle, an orange triangle, a yellow ball that's bouncing up and down, because maybe happiness is something that is climatic and anticlimactic. As you know, I should also mention this. It's like you can also argue that, like, data analytics in Ghana would be a bit easy because Kofi means born on Friday. So you can always look at, like, if you know a lot of Kofis, then you can like say that, oh, I know a lot of Ghanaians that are born on Friday. So I always made a joke that, like, if they ever did like some surveys, it would be interesting, because if it's like a bunch of Kofis like tend to swim more than, let's say, Komna, which is like a Tuesday or Wednesday. Oh, actually, I screwed up. I think it's Tuesday. It's like, oh, damn. Can you make a correlation that people born on a certain day do more than that? But yeah. So Renee wrote, my happiness would be in waves, sea blue mixed with yellow circles for the sun. And why did you choose a rhombus, MA? Any particular reason?
The reason why I picked that is because so I don't know how to explain this, but to me it's like a shape that makes sense.
Mm.
Like it has edges and boundaries, but it's also kind of able to transform as a shape. So that I feel like that kind of fits me. Mhm.
So you're saying, like, happiness to you is something that is not necessarily rigid. So if you were to express that in like a visualization or showcase someone, you want something that can like expand and contract.
Yes, exactly. And this is a weird question because I feel like you're going so deep. But yes, I used to think I was more of a circular type of shape of person. And then I realized, just kind of like growing up, that I like lines. Like I'm that person who likes to color in between and outside of lines. I'm kind of a mix. So yeah, that's my shape.
Okay, that's a keep that in mind because it could be useful for other things as we go on. And then Renee, you're talking about waves, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Andrea. I know you're listening. What about you, Andrea? You have a shape that represents happiness, you're thinking, or even a color?
Good question. Honestly, I'm a beach person, so I probably would go with Renee. Waves. I'm from California, so I love sea blue. I love the sun, yellow. Those are usually the first things I do when I'm stressed out. I try to go someplace with waves and sun.
Yeah, yeah. And you see, like some like you were saying, Ma. It sounds a little deep, but I really do believe that like by being deep within ourselves and trying to visualize or even sonify or using our senses, we're able to make better judgment and analytical because then we're naturally implying applying empathy. We're actually being sympathetic because we're using ourselves as a gauge. So you like realizing that like, oh no, you might not be circular could change your whole worldview then because it's like, okay, some people might be circular, some people might be a rhombus, some people might need that expansor, some people might need that contraction. So when you're doing your analytics or when you're doing that's like a visualization that comes to the mind because sometimes we think that technology will take over everything, but a lot of it comes from what kind of biases and mindsets that we're bringing in, which brings us to the next topic, which I'm going to go in. Is someone had a similar idea to this, and their name goes by A.M. Drake. For this one, A.M. Drake is a black lady in tech, and she realized there wasn't a lot of data sets for hair. And I don't know how many if you watch a lot of cartoons, maybe you watch some Tyler Perry. Yes, I have to call out Tyler Perry because sometimes if you look at the wigs, they're not done right. I have realized this. I've come to learn this. And even though I'm playing around on that, is that one of the things as we know that, especially in historical Black culture, is representation of our hair. And if you looked at a lot of things, there wasn't great diversity in how the hair looked. So AM Drake decided that one way of representation was getting data sets and motion capture to represent the hair in our system. And as you can see, oh, no problem. And as you can see, there's different hairstyles, different thoughts.
I don't know if this is for the people who are just joining in, but I remember that the happiest I was when I had my fro and it was big, big, big. So that was like my my freedom moment. And I think I was 13 or 14. So I just love that.
So you would equate your happiness, like you see, you just equated that happy moment to an afro, right? And this is what I think is like interesting when we talk about quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis, where unless people are starting to diversify what they think, they might not even think about that in terms of like, that question, what makes someone happy? Sometimes what makes you happy is not the environment, but what you express. Like you would just express right now, the afro is a sign of happiness. And I did do a research once where you asked, like in the 1960s and 70s when they were going to the civil rights, the afro was the source of happiness, was the source of liberation, was the sort of like, as Renee's saying, when the hair is curly and free, some people have mentioned that was happiness. So isn't it fair to say that if let's say you have to like hide your afro and whatnot, is there a possibility there is a correlation just by looking at someone that we can like you shouldn't infer data but maybe hypothesize at that moment for someone like you were saying covering the hair that you have a less emotional tie on that?
I think that you're touching on like a really interesting point because I heard recently somebody say something that I was like, this is against the culture because like if you're a black girl or black woman, you're not really allowed to say this. But when I heard her say it, another black woman, I was like, I get this because I feel this, but I can't say it. But I think also the reason why the feeling of happiness is towards that afro is because when I was a baby, like when I was little, my mom had an afro. So I remember that and I remember just like loving her hair. I wanted to be like my mom. And then when I was finally able to do that, when I was like a very young teenager, I was like, I have arrived. Like that was like one of my six signals as like a person. I'm finally like doing what my mom used to do. I'm finally becoming like a grown person. So I think you're really onto something by maybe thinking about what makes us happy. Like something very simple like an afro can make somebody happy like me. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also a sense because as it was said in the beginning, I am a creative coder and performative programmer. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the ways I have to do data, I have to come up with like random ideas, and sometimes it's just from visualization, but also thinking of the experience. And that's really what I'm trying to do here by accent colors, accent food, accent about hairstyles, and showing examples. Because I do think sometimes we get into these technical fields sometimes and we feel we have to lose ourselves. So I'm just here like yeah, I can go very technical, which I'm going to show an example of like how like you can come up with experiences if you think like that, if you think through emotions, but also at the same time as like if you think about some of these random questions, it could help your analysis. And yeah, so that's why like I'm touching on the points because it does actually help your research because you can come in if you think about the different visualizations and all of that. So I'm going to show one example of this. So yeah. So for the happiness thing, I actually did. Let me just read what you wrote. Yes, especially career change. I thought I had to become something different to make the transition, and now I'm realizing I can be all of me and still go into the data space. My experiences are important, and that's what I'm really trying to like emphasize on this, especially Black History Month, to show that there's so much data within each of us. We are living things. How you see, how you eat, how you walk, how you touch, and by using that in the database, by using that to make experiences, you come up with like random correlations. So, so I remember for one data viz type thing, I had to do something for a company, True Love, and the question was, what would you do to bring people back into COVID? So this is like the COVID cases, but where it really got interesting is that I started looking at visualizations and different stuff that dealt with emotion. And one of the like the most interesting researches, and I can send the link afterwards, was the drivers of happiness at home before and after. So you see, if you look at it, there was a lot of change between having to achieve something, purpose, learning, flexibility, pay, manager, and all that stuff. Let me, you know, and then what was really interesting is like one of the things that I'd like to do on when it comes to visualization, I like to always look at Google Trend data. So one thing, if you realize, it seems that people like to look at happiness at Q4 and Q1. And then you see this like a weird thing that people start looking at workplace happiness during April and during January. And I was guessing that January, because New Year resolutions, and April, you're probably sick of it and you probably want to go on vacation. So by thinking creatively and all that, I found out that one way you can like offset the gas and get people going is by rotational carpooling. And the thing with why I came up with rotational carpooling was, first of all, people don't like to spend gas, so not spending money on your transit makes you happy. But the real thing with the rotational, because talking to some people and doing some gathering, I realized that sometimes you don't want to talk to the same person all the time, because sometimes you want to know about your coworkers, but not too much. So I suggested like looking through a lens of happiness and feeling, and looking at how that data viz was spread, and that you can probably get happiness and emotion out of people that are positive if they will talk to people, but not too much. Like the closer you get to know someone, that could like be great, but also there's more risks of conflict. So that was one example of like how thinking of like visualization outside of the norm and looking at qualitative norms, looking at how people feel, what makes people expand and contract. I was able to come up with like a cool thing like rotational carpooling. And of course, Renee spring cleaning anything. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, let me know, or wants to discuss that. I can also send a link to that because I know I speed rushed that a bit, but it was just to show that thinking of these questions can actually be used in an actual case study or for actual companies. And that's where that hair thing really came to mind, because it was like, okay, we're looking at the issue from a different angle. Like, instead of asking what makes people mad, how to get people happy. And sometimes that shifts the narrative. So what I'm gonna do right now to change the pace to go into the other stuff, I'm gonna play some sound right now for 1-2 minutes, and I wanna, like, if you're in the chat, tell me some tasks that come up to mind when you hear this. If you were able to hear that sound, what came to mind when I walk into a grocery store, selecting items and scanning them out? Yeah, I can hear that. Okay, I hear wind chimes on a porch. Interesting layers of sounds. Soundtrack of a movie, someone walking in a rocky place. Very interesting. But what if I told you that that actually was a data sonification of the color? Hold on, let me get the color of one color, because this is where I like to like really dig into the practice that I do. So the color that you're seeing on the screen, all the values that you see below is how I made the sound. Because I had a project where I took sound and translated them into color. So the color you were all experiences and everything was this color burgundy. And why I like playing with like this type of data sonification or like this, because I realized that sometimes it expresses how, depending on the medium, would affect. Everyone said like grocery store, wind chimes, rocky place. Does knowing that this, if you saw this color before you heard the sound, would that have changed your answer? In what ways would it have changed your answer? Is it because of lack of information, or is it something that how you hear probably can be perceived different than how you see. Yeah, the color would have given me more information, would have influenced. So what I'm going to do this time, we're going to listen to another soundscape, but you're going to know the color before you hear it, and then we're going to see if there's any discrepancy. Hold up. So now the color that you see on the screen is the color you're going to hear. And once again, I map this to different parameters of the color. So it's supposed to be a feeling of the color. But we can stop there. But in that one, how did knowing the color and the sound affect each other? And would you say which one had a greater influence on your mood, the sound or the color? Okay, the color had more influence. And that's the thing why I really like playing with data sonification. So before when I was asking you the happiness question, and like we had MA explain how happiness is a thing that expands and contracts and is free flowing. That's one analyst. But now let's say I flip that question and ask the pattern of what sounds makes you happy, makes you anxious. Would that correlate with what you were saying, the happiness or anxiousness with the color?
I think the red had more of an effect than anything else. Red is just one of those colors that delivers more shock value, so it has more of an impact on the sound. Because even before, when you were showing the kente cloth and you just sort of had the listing and it said red and it had like the word death next to it, like for some reason I was seeing like red at a funeral and I'm like, no, that can't be right. Why would there be red at a funeral? Because you were talking about a color that people would wear. But then when I think of the visual of the color red, uh like it often means like something is wounded or something is hurt. So like it sort of brings more value to it, the visual of the color red, than just the words or the sound. But
It's
I could
very
just be a more visual person. So
But it's actually very interesting that you said that, because now this is where, like, going back on like how visualization is an amplification of voice. In Ghanaian culture, close relatives do wear red in some customs. They do wear red to show how deeply affected they were by the loved one. And then those wear black are well wishers that came to mourn with the family. And then even in some instances and customs and traditions, if the person is over a certain age, then people will start wearing white. So that means, so if you were to go to like some Ghanaian funerals, depending on the amount of red, black, and white, you can actually tell from that amount who was close to the person, who came there to support, and who came there for like, even though I wasn't that close, let's enjoy the life of the person because they were able to live such a long life. Yeah, people have been living, I would argue that people have been living color theory every day, right? Like some people, you can tell, like, when you went to school or when you went to parties with some friends, you can tell their mood from what they wore. Because we do choose subconsciously. And this is why I do like talking about color and food, because there are things that I think demystify some of the hardships that people have when it comes to data science, because this is stuff that as lived experiences, we are able to rationalize, especially with people going in, we are able to see those patterns. Now, we know if you do it long enough, you know that causation and correlations are not always equal, but it does have implications on how we analyze things, how we infer bias, how we think the next dress will come out. So it is very interesting, as you said, to see how the diaspora and how different cultures sort of migrate. So there is big data in such a thing. So it's very interesting, like Renee, what you were saying. And then when I told you that, that probably was like, oh, that's very interesting because unless you're from that culture, you wouldn't even know that little fact. But now it is. That probably now changes how you view that color. So by adding that one piece of data right now, if you never knew it, that probably changed how you view red at the moment. And then yeah, and then we're gonna do one more visualization, sonification, and then go on. This one, yeah, this one I'm gonna let it play first, and then I'm gonna let people try to decipher what it is after. So, any thoughts on how that made you feel? Any thoughts on what that could have represented if you didn't look at my screen? Or even if you did? We were having a steel pan dance party, which was interrupted by the school bell. I can see that happening. I can see that. Any other ideas or feelings that were migrated from that? Okay, I see we have some Nollywood. It's very interesting that you brought up Nollywood, because yeah, that's very interesting because what you heard was back to the color things that I was talking about, but I deconstructed the following colors for that project. Hold up, let me. So the colors you heard in that was a deconstructed view of peppers, onions, rice, chicken. So it had a one was the color of tomato, one was the color of rice, one was the color of peppers, one was the color of onions, one was the color of chicken. Yes. So it was I was trying to so that is like the deconstructed version of jollof where as you start off, I think I started off with the tomatoes and rice in the sound and then try to get the color. So how I did is that I took the color, all the meals had to be a color. So tomato is actually a color. I checked onion is a color, rice is a color, found a way to data sonify that or map that in a sonification and then put it together. So what you heard was deconstructed jollof. It's a Nigerian or Ghanaian. We're not going to get into that beef because maybe it's neither, maybe it's both, maybe it's one or the other. But what you heard was a deconstruction of jollof. And let me go back to what MA was saying. It's a lot of sounds like an old telephone sound back home when the bell used to ring and the rooster used to crow and the old radio was trying to find a signal. It's like a mesh of robotic and natural belief sounds, yes. And of course, as mentioned, the reason why I wanted to do Jollof and in particular is because we always talked about, like Jollof Wars. So I was like finding it very interesting if I did like the Ghanaian version or a Ghanaian version or a Nigerian version. And then thinking about like if I were to do it again, like how there's different instances. So add like maybe one might use a Maggie cube, might use more salt, one might use more ginger. So just a way to like express my voice, but also get a very detailed analysis of data in this time. Mary. I felt like I was at the market before it got really busy. And this is where I say that data science can be done creatively because a lot of people did mention Nollywood songs. A lot of people did mention market. A lot of people did mention steel pan without even realizing that it was deconstructed jollof. But whenever I thought of jollof, I was thinking like, party, a rush, gotta let that tomato simmer, gotta let that rice simmer. Because you could cook it in 30 minutes and there's like an 8 hour where you let that sauce marinate. So I did wanted those sounds of like how it goes in. But I am bored outside in the diaspora. So I did want it to have that futuristic sound. So it was one of those things that if I'm gonna make art or sound with that, how do I let my voice go between that traditional line and that futuristic. Maybe if I use the data, maybe it will come true across. And without telling anyone what it is, I see everyone already talking about party. I hear everyone going on that. So it's one of those things that like even the music we listen to contains data, right? And if anyone is also interested in like music and how it changed, there is a Spotify playlist analyzer that does talk about how fast a song is, how danceable a song is. So you can post a Spotify playlist, and it will tell you the data that's included in it. It will tell you the BPMs. It will tell you the popularity, tell you the happiness of it, and it can do that also for songs. So I'm gonna like put that in the chat. And this was one of the things I'm like, if I can do that with songs, how come I can't do that with food that is close in my culture? I don't know if jollof is my favorite food. It could be. It's definitely in my top five. I don't know if it's my favorite food, but it's definitely a top five meal. Maybe top three if I'm being honest. So let's go to similar song file. Does anyone have a song that that they want to play in it? That they want. What song is everyone feeling at the moment? We're gonna go with Burna Boy, last. It's not respecting this. So you see, Burna Boy, let's go to analyze the song, right? So let's go with some of these track. So it says, so categorized, so according to the data, it's categorized as Nigerian pop, Nigerian hip hop, dancehall, Afro dancehall. Something tells me that Spotify might have a little issue with Afro beats, but I'm not here to cause beef. And you see, this is very interesting, right? So according to their data, right, it has a popularity of 75, danceability 80, energy 56, liveness, beachiness. So we're going to keep that in mind because I think that's very interesting to look at. So danceability 80, energy 56, popularity 75, liveness, beachiness. Okay. You know what? We're going to try to play with, since we've been talking about happiness, we're going to try to like keep a thing on happiness, danceability, and energy. And this is another thing that like why I like this creative data science, because right now it's more of we're trying to infer on who is trying to do it. So it's like reverse engineering, if you want to call it. Like, can we try to understand better? So with the danceability of 80, is there a song that we can come up in mind right now? A song that would have more danceability than Last Last? A song that can beat the Last Last?
I think it's quite funny that it's 55% happy because the song is about a breakup.
But maybe that's what it is. No, like
I guess. I guess.
so are we? So right now, with what you're saying, you brought up a point. So does that mean that we can infer that like R&B songs shouldn't be unhappy? So what's a sad R&B song? Does anyone have sad R&B song?
Water runs dry.
Oh, Boys to Men. All right, so you see popularity, not that popular. You see happiness, it gave it a 52, and it gave the
I guess
59.
all sad is 50%.
And you see energy is 37, acousticness. So it's a very low energy song, right? But it's semi-danceable. Anyone else has any ideas? So I guess right now we're trying to have a visualization right now of a low happy song and lower danceable song. Does anyone have ideas? Okay, I see we have Tony Braxton and Unbreak My Heart. All right, so before I show the things, what kind of results are we guessing for this? Are we guessing that it
I'm
will
guessing
be
it's going to be 55% happiness.
Ash? What do you think? Ma, Andrea, what do we think? Do we think that Tony Braxton is sad, or are we trying to infer sadness? What level of sadness shall it come?
I think it's sad, sad.
Sad, sad.
Sad, so we're going
I
30 to 40.
I always thought that she was always like hopeful, maybe 60%.
Okay, so this song we're checking. Ooh,
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 wow.
Ash, you chose one of the probably least happiest songs there are. 11. So that was a pretty good one. But you see, like this is very interesting.
This is just, it makes me wonder how they come up with the
Yeah,
happy.
how do they qualify all of this?
They do have that somewhere. You see on the bottom. Hold up.
Like maybe because
Yeah.
maybe the lyrics to
Let
this
me see this.
are
So I'm gonna like
sadder.
dig it up because I actually know.
They're
So
doing some kind of sentiment analysis with the
yes, they are.
words.
Yep. So scores with a higher number sound more positive, while tracks with a lower number sound more negative. So sad, depressed, angry. And danceability describes how suitable your favorite song is for dancing based on a combination of musical elements, tempo, rhythms, stability, beat strength, and overall regularity. And then energy is representing of perceptual measure of intensity, activity. Typically, energetic tracks feel fast, loud, and noisy.
So
And
the happiness is based on the sound.
no, it's based on the sound, but also
Yeah.
sentimental analysis. So last, even though it is about a breakup, a lot of the words would have positive undertones. While break my heart is a very negative phrase, right?
Yeah, but I always thought like this one was um the music was sad, but she was trying to be like a survivor with the lyrics. I don't know.
So that's a good
I
one.
don't
Yeah,
know if I'm up to that
Survivor.
one.
We're gonna choose Survivor, but definitely. Oh no, someone. We're gonna
No,
do.
that one is like very like very upbeat, very positive. But this one I always felt like it was like a heartbreak, but not a heartbreak song. I don't know how to make sense of it.
So we're gonna go with Overjoy, Stevie Wonder, and wow, Overjoy is low too, low energy, low danceability, low happiness.
Low energy? They really telling us Stevie Wonder is low energy? I am filing a
Because of the
petition.
tempo. It's because of the tempo.
Is it? I
Yeah,
don't know all of his songs. I know some of them.
because you see, it's the tempo they had it down, and I feel like this is
Which makes
that.
me think that some of the characteristics that they have or the ways that they have of saying a song is a certain doesn't really represent it well.
Yeah, who do they have listening to these songs? Black people like us?
But,
Or who? Who
but,
is
but,
their
but,
character set?
but now you understand. It goes back to your thing that you said earlier. Remember, I remember now that you were saying that when you're 13, that Afro meant happiness when you go in, and that's why it's the same thing. Also, when Renee was saying that, oh, there's red, and then once we explain, it's like okay, red in culture. So it's one of those things that like R&B, if you're not in the culture or if you're not understanding that history, you might take some stuff as low happiness when really it is about to cheer up. Because it's the same thing like when someone says, I hate you, but then it's like, I hated you, or it's like, I did hate you. All of that might sound negative, but if I said, I did hate you, I gotta wait till the next line because I did hate you means that maybe you're growing up. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
it
It can
depends
have
on the
multiple meanings.
exactly. So it's one of those things that like going in, and that's why once again I named this like Amplify Your Voices. I showed the hair thing, showed the Kente Club talking about carnival and different music because some of the things is that we infer stuff differently because we understand the culture. So what sometimes being ourselves is the data set that's needed to get other people to come out because we're looking at this and we're having the only one that we really knew was probably going to be like horribly sad, lack of a better term, was Unbreak My Heart, right? So
I don't agree with that one still. Unbreak My Heart is an anthem. It's a survival anthem. I don't know about this. I'm so conflicted right now.
confliction is good because like one of my sayings is that sometimes when we go into this, sometimes getting deep means you have to be conflicted because that's why I say data is poetry and poetry is data because sometimes you can look at the data and be like, no, if I change the parameters, I can get it to say something else. So when people say data is unbiased, that is not true. And that's like my whole overall message that it is a creativity. It does, even though we call it objective, there's so much subjective elements in it because sometimes you're looking at that piece and you're like, what type of questions were they asking? What types of stuff is? Like, if let's say you played a song right after a funeral, and most people will still be sad. But if you probably answered at people after a wedding or after a birthday party, the same song changes its tone, right? Like,
Yes, I understand what you're saying. You're saying that the inputs that we think that the inputs are so clean, and then we are doing this process of clean, but that's not really what it is because people are messy people.
we're all
Mhm.
messy. We're all messiness. Like, and that's why like once again I like before all of you came, I was telling Andrew, I'm like, you know what, in this thing, I'm trying to subvert what we even call visualization, what we even call sonification, what we even call data analysis, because right now we're visual in data, and it's like even trying to apply. So is it that the visualization is wrong? Is it the analysis is wrong? Or is it that in the end of the day, it does matter who tells our stories because there could be that cultural difference that makes a difference to other people viewing it. So right now we have Survivor, Destiny Child. So are we saying Survivor is a happy song or not? So
Survivor is a bop. The whole tempo is like double
Yeah.
speed, and you're hopping, the whole thing. It's a bop. So it is definitely a happy song. I don't know. Unless they're angry in it,
or
but
is it energy or is it danceability? Is it a danceable song?
I danced to that song. Me and my
Yeah.
brothers danced to that song. So yes.
Yes,
It's our
I
And what
agree.
ambient.
about the energy? Does it have high energy, that song?
Yes.
Um, yes, it does actually have lots of energy, especially when it gets to the hook and it just goes a little bit faster. Yes,
Okay.
it starts off slow though. That's the only thing I have against it. It doesn't go like hard, but then when it gets into
So
it.
according to the visualization and the analysis they have, it's a 62, so it's not that much
Percent.
happier than last. Danceability supposedly is 51%,
Yes,
but
I
energy
love it.
is 91.
I love that the people understand the song. Why they give the instrumentalness a 0?
Oh, I
It's
don't
true
know.
because it does start with a little bit of a instrumental,
Also,
but
why
an
is they
instrumental
giving
must mean
acoustic
like
a
just
0?
instruments alone.
Yeah, the greater likelihood the track contains no vocal content.
Oh,
So
no
it's
vocal
given a
content.
because like how the song goes with the hook and stuff. The hook really sells the song.
hmm Okay, this is all very interesting. I like it. I'm probably gonna have to spend more time on here figuring out who they measured.
Okay. I see we're getting into
And I think
this.
it sort of shows the need for a more um black perspective to the input of the data that
Thank you.
exists, especially in terms of categorizing the music to the right genre, and then capturing the right feeling.
Yes,
Because I think just by going by the tempo alone doesn't really tell you much, because there's music that has a certain tempo in different cultures that is happy music. Sometimes people are happy and they need a song that they dance together, and they're not necessarily going to be as quick or like as like a dance music track that I guess people would typically see as happy
they should
through
have
this
done
type.
this to the church music, choir music. They should have gone to a black church and just tape all the songs and put it up there because I swear they would get some of it wrong for sure.
So nothing even matters featuring D'Angelo. And then
Oh,
this is what
please.
it said. It said
Okay.
happiness 55%, danceability 54, acousticness 70, energy 36. Okay,
Uh,
so let's just bring it up. I like what you brought up. I like you said that this is literally about being happy, right? So so what was wrong? Is it
So they
you know
didn't understand it.
hold up.
Oh,
You know what?
interesting.
Because I have done this once and I'm going to do it now. Because for those that don't know, there's something called sentimental analysis. Sentimental analysis takes every word or like a sentence and tries to give it a positive and negative meaning. And you could look at song lyrics and check their sentimental analysis. So we're going to look at the lyrics and check it out. Because we're trying, yeah, NLP, yeah, all that stuff. I like using it, but the problem is you really have to work on the stop notes because it takes some words and amplifies them. So some words would be considered neutral, and then some words would have some of the strongest negative undertones ever. Some of them do, because I have done this. Some of them do, but some of them you can like. There's some online stuff where you can check sentimental analysis, and I think it's very good because like the more I have used it, I'm like, oh, this is what the word is. So we're gonna look at Nothing Even Matters by Lauren Hill. So we're going to try to see why it wasn't saying that. Okay, and by looking at it, I already see some flags on how it could confuse. Now the skies could fall. Knowing this, it probably I can like right now I'm guessing I can try to look for like a quick sentimental analysis to do online. But right now you see the word fall, that can be considered negative. Not the word not seems negative. Very small can be considered relative. Nothing even matters. Seeing nothing. Nothing even matters. I don't need no. Without. But then again, we have a very positive line. Your love makes me feel 10 feet tall. I guess we can say that's a very positive line. Nothing even matters. So I'm wondering, naturally having played with this, did it miss, did the data not have enough information to realize that nothing even matters? It wasn't a negative undertone. These buildings could drift out to the sea, some natural catastrophe. Still, there's no place I'd rather be. If you're reading all of that with the nothing even matters, you're like, okay, that's positive. You're trying to say, yes, it missed the vibe check. Because right now, if you had no vibes, and I don't know how many people are purely vibeless, but AI, let's be honest, is vibeless. If it's vibeless, these buildings could drift out to sea, some natural catastrophe. That's probably negative. Let's be honest. If you didn't realize that Lauren Hill was out of context, those lines are probably negative. Still, there's no place I'd rather be. It probably mischecked that. But since we infer different meaning to those words in with our own experiences, we understand what it's really saying is that even if everything crumples around us, I would be a place. And I see someone talk about if we can match playlists to our mood. Yeah, so one time I did try that with some people. We're trying to make a game on like what playlists can it's try to get a mood. So we're trying to do parameters. Okay, we want a 75% danceable this and that. And then it's like, okay, make a playlist that you think would hit like a certain level of energy, certain level of happiness, certain level of that. And also, I have a couple songwriter friends, and I told them it would be interesting to like take songs that they like, go through the sentimental analysis, and then try to make the song happier. So, like, nothing even matters. What are some ways that we can make that naturally happier to like pass the AI? So, I think it's also a cool writing tool because maybe it goes in. Exactly. It reads it literally unless the person integrates that into the code. So it's one of those things that, once again, back to like everything we are saying, like when I showed the song with the food, until I told you that information, it literally didn't register in that it could be jollof. And once I messaged off, like, oh wow. And it's one of those things that like there is pre-assessment, assessment, and post-assessment. There are some songs that I have only liked because I saw a live performance or the music video. Like I think the music video is very an underrated form because some music videos actually elevated the song. Like for example, today I wanted to hype myself up, so I played Nuck If You Buck today because I really wanted to be in that mood, you know. Well, Nuck If You Buck, if you don't know, it's a very aggressive song. But as you can tell, Luck If You Buck has an 84% energy, dance ability 87%, which is true because every time I listen to that song, I like it's songs like that I wanted dreads because I just felt it was like such a nice visual to have dreads and just like knock your head. Classic, of course, but 76%
Would
happiness.
that be your happy hair?
Yeah, if I had happy hair, it would be dreads. Because whenever I watched like those dudes from the South just shaking their heads, I wanted to shake my head. So for me, like if I saw someone dread, like how much their dreads would move and bounce, I can tell how much they're vibing to a song. Because the hair don't lie in those cases. Like sometimes you don't see the strain in their necks, but like you see their hair going like left, right. Like if one dread is going left, the other's going right, you know that person is vibing hard. Like that's an automatic vibe check when the dreads cross. So you don't even need to see the person face. You just see that head, those locks flying, you already know. So you see, but happiness. And remember, the thing is that we know Knock If You Buck is a very aggressive song. So I don't know about happiness, but I can see how AI got confused by that. I can see how it got confused by that. Hey Yeah by Adcuts. Yeah, Hey by Outkast. Yep, you see, oh, hey yeah, it's a 97% happiness, 97% energy, 73% danceability. I really like this choice, by the way. Nice. So wait, so but now, but it's very interesting because even though you're saying it's an unhappy song, you sort of had a vibe that it might go this direction. So I'm wondering what motivated you to do your choice? Because now you see, even though we're trashing the system in a way, we're also starting to understand. So now just realize that even though you might not agree with some of the stuff is said, you chose a song that you knew would play by that rules. So even though we don't have an understanding of what's behind the model, by trying to like do quote unquote vibe check, we have now understand maybe there's a pattern. So I'm very interested on what you chose the song, because out of all the songs we chose so far, this has the highest amount of energy. This has the highest amount of happiness. Also has low level of blindness, which is weird because I think that's the song that there was instrumentals, but that's me being. And hey, yeah, it does have a high energy. I'm surprised on the danceability because I think that song you can actually dance to. So any thoughts on this? Why this? Hey, yeah, it's at 97. And just for a sample, if anyone doesn't know the song, we can go with the lyrics. You think you got it, oh, you think you got it, but got it just don't get it till there's nothing at all. We get together, or we get together, but separate's always better when there's feelings involved. Mm. And also, I think also in the song, if you look at Heya, Heya actually uses the song Happy, uses the song Dance. Maybe the word all right.
I think the AI really can get tricked though, because this particular song, the way people reacted to it was always like it was a happy song. And the way people dance to it and the way that they are dancing to it in the video itself gives the impression that it's a happy song. But if you're really listening, it's not.
Mm. Supposedly it was also a satire. Supposedly it wasn't actually a very serious song by him if you actually like look at the trajectory of his music. So it's very
Yeah,
interesting that,
that's what he said in an interview. But
yeah.
I think in terms of the feeling that it gives off, but it's interesting how you could play with the AI in that regard in terms of its classification.
Yeah, no, this is a very good song because I do, because for me, I guess, but I actually like looked at the feeling. I'm like, yeah, I never felt that he was too happy doing it, right? Because it always seemed like a parody, but it's one of those things that like the human brain doesn't know between reality and fiction. So if you don't know, you're just going to imply by the basis that it's following. So if you didn't know it's parody, you would think it's happiness. Because a parody, you actually have to know the meaning behind a parody. And I think it
Unless they actually look at the classification, and if you classify the album as being comedy, um, then you come up with different results.
yeah. Like what's like now I'm very interested on this, so I want to place Quit Playing Games with My Heart by Braxy Boys. You see, right now this is Quit Playing Games with My Heart by Backstreet Boys. I don't know if people ever listen to them or know this song, but this song is,
You won't admit to it.
this song they said this song is 88% happy, 88% danceable. That song is not a happy song. The lyrics are literally don't quit playing games with my heart. Right? If I'm not mistaken. And let me go with one of my favorite collabs, Dilemma by Nelly and Kelly. You see, it thinks that song is happy. Well, that song is happy, and also a lot of other things. But I let me read what Mary wrote. But I didn't get that until I was an older teenager. When it came out, we were shaking and shaking. My friends, mom, brother. We loved Outkast at my house. We had the first records because of my older brother, the hip hop head. And that is where having domain knowledge does matter, because I think you do have to look at the history of Outkast and why they even split that album to understand, like, no, it has a lot of undertones, but undertones are very hard to look at it unless you're going from experience. Because I remember there was this Instagram thing I saw earlier today, and someone was saying that if you have knowledge but no experiences, you're just book smart. If you have experiences but no knowledge, you're ignorant. So is it that with some of these examples, we're just seeing ignorant because there is experiences by some of these people that are categorized in it, but there's no implicit knowledge base that they're basing it on? Or is it us being too subjective because we're in the scene, so we're over analyzing it with our information? Let's look at Roses by Outkast. Yep, you see Roses is 51% happiness, 75% danceability, 71 energy. The Love Below portion of the album was Andre detailing the beginning, climax, and the end of his relationship. Yeah. And you see Roses, it gave 51. But I also think that's also like, if we think about now the lyrics, when he says roses smell like that's, I think that line itself is like, you're not getting no positive, false positive on that, right?
I think Michael Jackson might lead to some interesting results just because, unlike most artists, he wrote his music in the minor scales, which they usually associate with unhappy music. But a lot of them, his upbeat tracks, are written in the sound, I guess, of unhappy music.
Okay, so if I was your girlfriend, 87% happiness, 90% danceability. What's the name of the song? Did I butcher it? No, rock with you. Yeah. I also remember the album being controversial in our section of the hood. Like the rest of my brother's friends and the guys on the block didn't like the record. Felt like had sold out. It really was a lightning rod, and that's what it is. So now I have "Rock with You," Michael Jackson, 85% happiness, 81% danceability. So I know we are close in near the time, but I cannot say no to Billie Jean. Billie Jean is a big track, so Billie Jean will be the last track of the day. It said Billie Jean has a danceability of 92, energy of 65, happiness of 85. So once again, I can send this thing in the chat, and then if you have more information, you can message Black Tides for goodies. And then if you also message them, and then they message me, I can also send more information on how to do sound stuff and all that. I didn't could have done more technical stuff, but I do think this is also nice to just look at other visualizations and correlate it with what I was talking about, kente cloth, hair, sounds, and how all of this can help us become better at data without sacrificing ourselves when we think about it in our own voices and see how that translates to other people's mindsets. So I know it's unconventional, probably maybe not what you were thinking about, but I do hope that through the music, through the clothes, through the hair, through the emotions, that we sort of got a feeling of how visualization and how expressing data can be, and how maybe if we think about different inputs and outputs, different results. So I do hope that maybe today or tomorrow or next week you try to come up with a playlist that tries to convey, and maybe that is your data visualization. This is a mood that makes me happy but might not be in. So I do hope everyone enjoy this. If you have questions, you can contact Black Ties. I would also answer, or you can also at me at Instagram. Now I'm just going to do a shelling a bit. You can miss I'm all that on all platforms. I'm always willing to answer. You can DM me. And I really hope that y'all enjoy. And we got a lot of great music today. So yes, and yeah, Mary, that's the whole point of today. Really, just amplify what you want. Music and like you had the idea of music and mental health. So that could be a very interesting thing on like maybe like getting playlists and then you get the data from Spotify and then your own data and see how that correlates and merges. So I do hope everyone enjoyed. You can contact me at Illis Preacher. You could also contact True Black Tides. And then if you say Kofi, I think I'm the only Kofi at the moment, but as I just said, Kofi means born on Friday, so there could be other people that were born on Friday. There is a 1 of 7 chance of being born on Friday, so I'm not that unique, but I am. So